of this preliminary hearing to establish beyond any reasonable doubt that on the afternoon of July 28th, Clay Trevor did willingly murder his guardian, Alexander Breyer. Commodore Franklin, prosecuting attorney for Sands Crossing, has asked me to assume his duties in this position because of his friendship with the Breyer family. We will call qualified witnesses who will establish that Clay Trevor had motive and opportunity to commit this crime, and the state will demand this case be held over for the grand jury. If it will please the court, the state would like to remind the Sixth Juror that this is a legal hearing and not a silent social. I find the clerking needles distracting and a general attitude not at all befitting a conscientious juror.
Juror number 6 will kindly put her knitting away. Miss Nettleton.
Oh, yes, Abigail? Your Honor?
Mr. Wood would like you to stop knitting. He finds it distracting.
Oh, fiddlestick. Nothing is more suited to your nerves than knitting. You should try knitting yourself, Jeff Willard. You're entirely too tense.
Your Honor, the Sixth Juror is interrupting my opening address.
The Sixth Juror? Mercy, I am the Sixth Juror, though I don't know why you can't use my name. It seems as if everybody's identified by numbers these days. Give up my knitting? Never. You see, knitting helps me think, and someone should certainly do that in this hearing.
There is nothing in this statute that prevents the juror from knitting. Will you please knit a little more quietly?
Of course, Your Honor. It's almost finished anyway. It's for my sister Hannah's boy.
Your Honor, this is delaying the hearing.
Mr. Willard, I grant that this is highly irregular, but we must remember Sands Crossing is a closely knitted community. Miss Nettleton, before her retirement, taught most of us at our local high school, and taught some of our children too. If there are certain formalities in this proceeding, we must treat them sympathetically. Please proceed.
Calls my first witness, Sergeant John Tolliver.
Sergeant John Tolliver to the stand. Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Name, please? Sergeant John Tolliver, State Trooper, stationed at the Sands Crossing Barracks. Were you on duty the afternoon of July 28th? Yes, sir. Can you tell the courtroom, in your own words, what happened that afternoon? We received a call at about 1:10 p.m. from Alexander Breyer's place, Autumn Code Island. Who made that call? Ella Meredith, Mr. Breyer's housekeeper. She said that Mr. Breyer had been shot, and she asked us to come at once. And you responded to the call? Yes. We took the police launch and reached the island in about 15 minutes. For the record, can you tell us the exact location of Parrot Island?
Everyone in these parts knows where Parrot Island is, Jeff Willard. Used to fish there when you skipped English class on Thursday afternoon.
Miss Nettleton, it is purely formality that the location of Parrot Island is clearly established in the record of this hearing.
Let the record also show, Your Honor, the Sixth Juror is asked to refrain from any further remarks. Please continue, sir. Parrot Island is a small island owned by the late Mr. Breyer. It is located in the bay halfway between Sands Crossing and the town of Lockwood. Why did you take the police lunch? There's a main causeway to the island from Lockwood. The causeway is on the other side of the island facing Lockwood, not more than 15 miles away from Sands Crossing. Please continue. We reached the island and we met Commodore Franklin there. He had just sailed across from the Lockwood Marina in his skiff. Did Commodore Franklin say why he'd come to the island? He had an appointment with Mr. Breyer. We moored our boat at the bank and went immediately to the house. Of course, Commodore Franklin was alarmed to hear of the accident to Mr. Breyer and accompanied us. What did you find at the Breyer house? The housekeeper, Miss Meredith, took us to the library, where we found the body of Mr. Breyer. He had been shot. There was a bullet wound in his chest. What happened then? I phoned the coroner and sent back to the barracks for more men. I also stationed men at the mooring bench so that no one could leave. Did you conduct a search of the house and island? Yes, sir. I searched the house myself. Did your search reveal anything unusual? I found a .38 revolver in one of the bedrooms. It had been recently fired. Is this the gun you found? Yes, sir. Let the record show that the autopsy had found a bullet tube come from a .38 caliber revolver. I now offer this gun in evidence as Exhibit A.
So ordered. Mark this Exhibit A and place it on the table.
found the gun in one of the bedrooms. Whose bedroom? Clay Trevor's bedroom.
Objection. The allegation that the gun was found in my client's bedroom is highly conclusive and does not show possible ownership.
That's right, Miss Shannon. I admit that I own a .38 revolver. It was always kept in the library desk for Mr. Breyer. I don't know how it got in the bedroom closet.
Objection overruled. Proceed, Mr. Willard.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Your Honor.
Abigail, Your Honor, there is a little question I'd like to ask.
It is not unusual for a jury to seek clarification from the bench at a preliminary hearing. Does your question have direct bearing on Sergeant Trolliver's testimony?
Well, I certainly hope so. You know, I'm not a criminologist, but there's something wrong here. Definitely wrong. If I were a murderer, and I wanted to dispose of a murder weapon in a hurry, and I had the entire land and ocean surrounding me, I'd never have hid the gun in my own bedroom closet. It just doesn't make sense.
An interesting point.
But someone else might have hidden it there to throw suspicion on Clay.
Why, Amanda, I believe you're right. Leave it to me and Mrs. Nettleton to find the lying innocent.
Oh, Mrs. Pitney, you're so kind. By the way, how did my home remedy act on your mother's lumbago?
Right as rain. She was painted the morning yesterday.
I'm so glad.
Silence in the court. There will be no further outbursts from members of the court. Miss Nettleton, I believe you made your point.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I will call my second witness, Mrs. Alice Bedford.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
You are Alice Bedford, personal secretary to late Mr. Breyer,
That's right. I was employed by Mr. Breyer for 5 years.
and you live in the house on Parrot Island?
Yes.
Who else lives in the house?
There is Betty Collins, Mr. Breyer's niece, Miss Meredith, our housekeeper, and Miss Potts, the cook and cleaning woman. And there are also... Will the witness raise her voice for the benefit of the court? I'm sorry.
Who else lives in the house?
Clay Trevor.
Is he related to Mr. Breyer?
No. Clay's parents died when he was very young. His father was Mr. Breyer's best friend. After his parents' death, Clay moved to Parrot Island, and Mr. Breyer has been like a father to him since then.
So Clay was likely to inherit Mr. Breyer's fortune. He had a motive.
No. How can you accuse Clay of such a terrible thing? Oh, Clay, I just know you shouldn't do this.
Now, Miss Bedford, did you handle Mr. Breyer's legal affairs?
I'm the executive trustee for this estate.
So the terms of the will are well known to you.
Yes.
Shortly before Mr. Breyer died, did he mention anything about changing his will?
I don't know why you're asking me these questions. It's quite evident that Miss Meredith has given you full account of my conversations with Mr. Breyer. She'll be able to tell you everything that happened in the house that afternoon.
Why, the very idea. I've never been so insulted in my life. Just answer the question, Miss Bedford.
Mr. Breyer told you he planned to change his will.
Yes, he asked Clay to go to town that afternoon and return with his lawyer.
What afternoon?
The afternoon Mr. Breyer was the afternoon he died.
And who were the beneficiaries of the present will?
Mr. Breyer's estate is divided equally among Betty Collins, Mr. Breyer's niece, Commodore Franklin, Mr. Breyer's friend, and Clay Trevor.
And the estate was a substantial one?
Mr. Breyer's estate is valued at more than $1 million.
And did Mr. Breyer indicate to you how he planned to change his will?
No, I knew nothing about that.
Isn't it possible that Mr. Breyer is planning to exclude one or more of the original beneficiaries from the will?
I don't know.
Isn't it possible that Mr. Breyer is planning to exclude Clay Trevor from his will?
No.
Why do you ask me that question? Why are you persecuting Alice? I tell you she had nothing to do with it. Mr. Breyer was going to exclude me from his new will, at my request.
Your Honor, but I object to these interruptions. Sustained. You will have no more outbursts in this courtroom. Does the defendant realize the seriousness of his statement?
Of course I do. I asked Mr. Breyer to exclude me from his new will so I could try to make it on my own. I was going to leave Parrot Island, and I didn't want his help. I was going to prove something to myself.
Noble gesture. Isn't it true when you found out Mr. Breyer is going to exclude you from his will, you killed him before a new will could be drawn up?
It's a lie!
I think Mr. Trevor's admission speaks for itself. I have no further questions. Mrs. Nettleton, you're out of order.
Nonsense, young man. I've never felt better in my life. My dear, you mentioned the estate was divided among three people.
Clay Trevor, Betty Collins, and Commodore Franklin.
Well, I know how people like to gossip in our little community, but isn't it possible that Miss Collins or Commodore Franklin might have learned that Alexander Breyer was planning to change his will? After all, he might have planned to exclude either of them, too. I think that any of the people in the old will might have had a reason to kill Mr. Breyer.
You did it again, Amanda. Why, sure, Betty Collins or Commodore Franklin would have done it just as easily as Clay Trevor.
Objection.
Objection sustained. Strike those statements from the record. Miss Nettleton, please try to prepare for further outbursts.
It was just a thought.
I call my third witness, Miss Betty Collins.
Please raise your right hand. Be sure to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
You are Betty Collins, Alexander Breyer's niece,
That's right.
and you live in the house on Parrot Island?
Only during the summer. My work and my apartment are in New York.
Were you at the Breyer house on the afternoon of July 28th?
Only during the morning. I left the Lockwood right after lunch, a little before 1.
Did you travel the causeway?
Yes. I didn't like sailing. I know it took long. I know it takes longer. I used my car.
While traveling the causeway, did you pass any other cars?
No, I didn't see anyone until I reached the town of Lockwood.
Who was at the house when you left?
There was the maid, the housekeeper, and Miss Bedford. And Clay Trevor was there, of course.
Clay remained at the house?
Yes, my uncle wanted him to run an errand after lunch.
What errand?
They were supposed to drive to the bank and pick up the lawyer, but he was supposed to drive the lawyer back to the house on Parrot Island.
To your knowledge, did Clay go to the bank that afternoon as planned?
Yes, but he and the lawyer at the house now returned. It was so confusing. There were policemen and reporters, and Uncle Alex was dead.
Thank you, Miss Collins. The witness.
Miss Collins, is there anyone who can prove you were in Lockwood the afternoon of the murder? Well, I went to the two shops, but I didn't meet anyone. Why should I have to prove anything? I'm not on trial. No one is on trial, Miss Collins. We're just trying to get the facts. That is all I know.
I call my fourth witness, Miss Vera Potts.
Mrs. Vera Potts? Please raise your right hand. Be sure to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Your name is Vera Potts?
Mrs. Thomas Potts, if you please. Pottsy, that is my husband, has gone to his reward.
Now, Potts here, Mrs. Potts. You're employed as maid at the home of late Alexander Breyer?
I am a professional domestic at Parrot Island.
Do you recall the afternoon of July 28th?
How can I ever forget it? Oh, poor Mr. Breyer. I don't know how that dreadful Clay Trevor could have done such a thing. Objection! Objection sustained. The witness will not express her opinions or conclusions in this hearing. Well, everyone knows what happened. Why, I saw with my own eyes.
Whom did you see? Mrs. Potts, please tell us in your own words.
Well, I was at the station after lunch. It was just about 1 o'clock.
How can you be certain of the time?
Well, while I did the dishes, I always listened to my favorite soap opera, Frida Faces Life. It was such a program. Poor Frida, she can't decide whether to marry a wealthy British nobleman or a handsome captain in the Navy.
Mrs. Potts, would you please?
I was only trying to set the time. Frida's program ended at 1, and I was waiting to listen to Valiant Valerie. You really should listen to Valiant Valerie.
Mrs. Potts, will you please continue with your testimony?
The theme music had just begun when I saw him running across the back lawn.
Whom did you see?
While Clay Trevor, of course, came from the far side of the house, from the direction of the library, and ran towards the boathouse.
Are you certain the man you saw was Mr. Trevor?
I don't know why you keep asking me that. I tell you, I saw Clay Trevor.
Sergeant John Tolliver testified that he received a phone call from Parrot Island at 1:10, just 10 minutes after Mrs. Potts saw Clay running from the library. I have no further questions.
say, Amanda, but my eyesight is good as yours.
Vera, what color is this sweater?
Anyone knows a green sweater.
A green sweater?
Green as they come.
Vera, this is a blue sweater. Why, green would look positively horrible on him, boy. It wouldn't suit him at all.
Your Honor, we have no further questions to ask, please. Step down, Mrs. Clark.
I call my final witness, Mrs. Meredith.
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
You're Miss Ella Meredith?
That's right.
There's no need to be nervous, Mrs. Meredith. You're employed by the late Alexander Brown.
Oh, it's his housekeeper.
How long did you hold the position?
For 15 years.
And you performed your duties on the afternoon of July 28th?
I was working at the house, of course.
Will you tell us what happened?
Mr. Breyer had lunch with his niece and Clay Trevor. Luncheon was served on the patio, outside the library.
Yes, what happened?
After lunch, Miss Collins took her car and drove to Lockwood. Objection! The allegation that Miss Collins drove to Lockwood is an assumption on the part of the witness. Objection sustained.
Will you continue with your testimony and find your answers to my questions?
I only know what Miss Collins told me.
Did you know how Mr. Trevor planned to spend the afternoon?
He told Clay to pick up his lawyer at the bank building. And that is not hearsay. Mr. Byers spoke those very words at the luncheon table.
What happened then?
Mrs. Potts cleared away the dishes and took them into the kitchen. Mr. Breyer left the patio and entered the library through the French door. He was expecting Commodore Franklin.
What time was that?
It was about 10 minutes to 1.
Did you remain on the patio?
No. I wanted to speak to the gardener who was working on the other side of the house.
Did you see Mr. Trevor after lunch?
No. I suppose he went to the garage to get his car for the trip to the bank.
What did you do then?
The gardener and I had gone to the front of the house. He was planting some shrubs there. When I heard something that sounded like a backfire or a shot. First I thought the sound came from the garage. But then I realized it had been inside the house. I was frightened. I hurried inside, looked in the library, and found...
I realize it's been these last past weeks, but it is imperative that we have your testimony. Please continue.
I found Mr. Breyer. He was lying on the floor near his desk.
Found Mr. Breyer's body?
Yes, I found him. But he wasn't dead. Mr. Breyer was still alive.
What happened then?
I reached for the phone to call the doctor, but Mr. Breyer, grabbed my arm. He knew there was nothing I could do for him. And then he spoke to me.
What did Mr. Breyer say?
It was difficult to understand him. I heard him whisper, "The bank. He's going to the bank. Stop him."
You mentioned the bank?
Those are Mr. Breyer's words. And then he finally said, "Don't let him get away. He did this to me."
And to the best of your knowledge, Mr. Trevor was the only person, there was only one person involved in the bank that afternoon?
Yes, that person was Clay Trevor.
Objection. Jeff Willard, you're still as impetuous as you were back in sophomore English. There was another person at the bank that afternoon. Miss Shaw was an insufferable fool not to realize. Please police report. I believe that's the phrase. I'd like to ask Sergeant John Tolliver a question.
It is not unusual for a jury to seek clarification from the bench in a preliminary hearing. I will grant your request. Call Sergeant Tolliver to the stand.
This is an outrage.
Sergeant John Tolliver to the stand. Remember, he is still under oath.
Travel to Parrot Island by boat from Sands Crossing.
That's right, Miss Nettleton.
And you mentioned that you saw Commodore Franklin as you approached the island.
We arrived at the same time. He even came up to the house with us.
And where did you leave the police launch, John?
Why, we moored our boats at the bank. But I don't see. The bank?
Yes, John, the bank again. Really, Your Honor, the English language can be so confusing at times.
I feel this is hardly a time for a lesson in grammar.
You never were very good at grammar, Jeff. You should have paid more attention when we studied homonyms. You see, Your Honor, Clay Trevor wasn't the only person at the bank that afternoon. Sergeant Tolliver was there, and Commodore Franklin was there, too.
Miss Nettleton, I don't like your insinuation.
I meant no offense. Why, anyone could build a case against Sergeant Tolliver, or you out of the evidence. Let's suppose that you arrived at Mr. Breyer's immediately after lunch. You could have joined him in the library without being seen by anyone in the household.
Preposterous.
Not at all, Commodore. You might have learned that Mr. Breyer was planning to exclude you from the will and not Clay Trevor.
I demand the immediate dismissal of this woman as a member of the jury.
But I'm simply trying to show you how a case can be built against anyone. Let's suppose you shot Mr. Breyer with Clay Trevor's gun, a gun you knew was always kept in the library desk. You then ran to Trevor's bedroom and planted the gun in his pocket. You then exited the library through the French doors and rounded the house where you were seen by Mrs. Potts. Remember, she identified a sweater, not a man. You then returned to your boat moored at the bank.
Ridiculous.
You headed out into the bay, and when you saw the police launch, you returned to the bank and joined Sergeant Tolliver. The police thought you were just arriving at Parrot Island, but actually you were just leaving. What were Mr. Breyer's final words?
The bank. He's gone to the bank. Stop him. Don't let him get away. He did this to me.
Mr. Breyer's murderer escaped to the bank, and Mr. Breyer knew that you traveled to Parrot Island by boat. I'm afraid, Commodore, that Mr. Breyer's words fit you very well. Do you remember how the Commodore was struck that afternoon?
Well, I guess he was wearing sport clothes. Maybe a jacket. No, I think he was wearing a sweater. A blue sweater?
Mrs. Potts saw a man in a blue sweater, in a green sweater, but we know she's colorblind and sees blue and green. And it would be easy to call the marina where you moor your boat to find the exact time you sailed on the 28th. They keep a log of all arrivals and departures.
Rubbish.
It might prove that you sailed much earlier than we imagined. It might prove that you had ample time to kill Mr. Breyer before the police arrived.
I believe I'm the end of my strike. Yes, Commodore. Could have been the man I saw running towards the bank. He told me he was changing his will, cutting me out without a penny. After all these years, I don't know. Somehow I had the gun in my hand. I didn't mean to kill him. I didn't want to. Then I had to get away. I ran upstairs, hid the gun in Trevor's closet, and downstairs into the library again. Breyer kept staring at me as I crossed the room and ran out the door. I think he called my name. He knew I was heading for my boat at the bank. Yes, I told him. Oh my God. Sergeant Tolliver, take the Commodore into custody. This hearing is closed. Mr. Trevor, the charge is beginning to withdraw. Okay, there's nothing wrong to suspect you.
Oh, Alice,
Don't talk about it. Don't think about anything but the future, our future. Amanda, you're simply the limit.
She probably suspected Franklin the whole time. Oprah saw it was nothing. You know, it's really amazing what will happen when a body puts its mind to thinking.
I don't know how you did it, Mrs. Nettleton, but I'm going to put my mind to thinking too.
My dear boy, you leave